Psych psych panda, psych psych panda panda, psych psych panda, psych psych panda panda. Tension shuka, tension shuka shuka, tension shuka, tension shuka shuka.
Oh, Jesus in
Welcome to this braided story of climate crisis in East Africa. I am Mara, a storyteller of dual Kenyan and Scottish heritage living most of the year on the Kenyan coast.
And I am John, a Kenyan storyteller living in Nairobi. Together we travel to the north of our country to listen to what has been changing for the people and their land. Our story follows pastoralist communities living through the worst drought for 40 years in the border region of South Sudan, northern Kenya, Uganda, Somalia, and Ethiopia.
It has many beginnings, a messy middle, and unknown endings.
Just like all the stories we are living and are leaving us.
Hapo katikati, in the messy middle, is where our work as storytellers begins. We gather living threads of language coaxed from under the tongues of those we meet and follow them back to their many beginnings. We braid these delicate threads into stories because we trust your generous imagination to gather under the baobab tree as the ibis begin their night cackling. The fire begins to crackle, and as we sip from the calabash, we hope these stories may gather long enough to have new conversations amongst themselves.
But we do not braid alone. We have found a story to be the yeast in the dough, yani mchuzi wa samaki, the conductor of the story orchestra. And it comes from Ile Ife, our Yoruba neighbors in the far west of Africa.
It is a story of the Orishas, heavenly deities who became tired of serving the great creator Olodumare. They no longer wished to surrender to his will, and some even dared plot the overthrow of both his physical and spiritual realm. He was so distant, some felt they could share his powers amongst themselves. But Olodumare knows everything and acted simply and decisively. He withheld the rain from the earth, and soon the world was encompassed by a staggering drought. The parched ground cracked herself wide open, and as the Orishas and their children began to starve, the skeletons of beasts began to litter the earth. After a short time, they sought to return to Olodumare and beg for forgiveness in the hope the rain would return. In their bird form, they took to the skies. The mighty eagle, the sparrow, the swift, and others, each trying desperately to reach the great lake in the sky. But all failed, and it appeared that all hope was lost. Then Oshun, Orisha of beauty and delight, arrived in her peacock form and offered to undertake the journey. Oh, how the Orishas scoffed and laughed. "You might break a nail," one cried. But the peacock insisted they let her try. She took off and began to fly towards the sun. She soon tired, but carried on, though her feathers became scraggly and black from the withering heat of the sun. The feathers were burnt from her head, but she kept on flying, and finally, through sheer will and determination, she fell at the feet of Olodumare and gasped her last breath. She was a pathetic sight. Her once beautiful form was hunchbacked, and her head was bald, covered with burns from flying so close to the sun. Olodumare, admiring of her tenacity, breathed life into her and asked her why she had embarked on such a perilous journey. She spoke that because of the beauty, the joy, the pure life force on earth, she had no choice but to risk her own life so that others might live. Olodumare saw that perhaps there was still something worth saving, and so allowed the rains to fall. He also stated that Oshun alone would be his messenger. However, she would return to earth in her new form, the vulture. And to this day, she holds the name Ikole, the messenger of the house of Olodumare, and is represented by both the peacock and the vulture.
Perhaps peacock and vulture teach us to hold and work with paradox. With our human eyes, we see them as opposites, one beautiful and one ugly. One graceful, one forceful. But no, There are two sides of the same story. Unexpected twins, each one reflecting the blessings of God to the earth in a very different way. Each one offering a different way of seeing and being in the world, both of which we need for our ecosystems to flourish. We can call our ability to appreciate both and work with both a kind of bird's eye seeing. That is a gift of this story. It dares us to keep flying beyond what we think is possible and receive the double blessing. In the paradox of our climate crisis, we need bird's eye seeing to take us beyond the hopelessness of stark opposites such as economic growth or environmental protection, national security or freedom of movement. In this podcast, we will explore the bird's eye seeing. That is holding climate-stressed communities together in the Horn of Africa and reflecting with the people on where more of it is needed. Psych, psych, panda, psych, psych, panda, panda.
So let us start at one of our beginnings. Everyone agrees that the weather pattern started to change in the 1970s and 1980s. Before that, it was far more predictable. Once every 5 years there was a drought, but that could be planned for. The grasses would grow thick and high, plenty to fatten the cows before the rains receded.
The rivers were streaming with fresh water and communities had plenty to drink.
Rituals and social gatherings allowed for time to reconnect and strengthen intergenerational familial bonds.
Those of a similar age set, known as the Rika, would undergo different initiations and rituals, for example, learning the roles of men and women in society and taking care of their nature.
But drought years have increased. First every 4 years, then every 3, and now every 2. Extremes the region didn't experience before. In Turkana, when we spoke to the elders, also called the Wazee, they lamented that God has moved far away from us. They understand the droughts they experience to be a curse to their people. The God of yesterday was closer. When a people believe their pastoral way of life has been gifted them by the unfathomable, the Almighty, the Creator, by God, a curse is very serious.
The tropics are already very changeable. Even within short distances, you may find great variation, but this has become more extreme. Devastating floods in South Sudan, extreme heat in northern Kenya. As things are now, the people are reaching their limits. We spoke to Joseph Ndeng, a South Sudanese journalist who has been investigating the crisis and the work of rainmakers. He told us about food insecurity in South Sudan.
The hunger gap in South Sudan is serious. According to the UN WFP report, 7 million people by the end of the year will go hungry, will have severe food shortage. And you know our country has only less than 11 million people. So if 7 million are in that gap, and 2 point something are displaced in to neighboring countries. So what do you expect? The number that remain is serious.
Communities have forgotten the old traditional practice of conserving and protecting trees, of using the dead trees for firewood rather than cutting down living trees to burn. The introduction of guns led to the shooting of game becoming a sport, where any wild thing walking on the land was a target. Thus, loss of wildlife within the region. The invasive madenge tree was introduced to curb desertification, but began to spread like wildfire, taking over from indigenous species and affecting the health of livestock.
And increasingly, young people are turning away from pastoralism, seeing it as a dangerous path due to the risk of violent cattle raids, as well as being non-lucrative and unsustainable.
But in the region, some places have it better than others. In Uganda, the other side of the mountain, the rainfall is better, pasture is better. So many pastoralists take their cattle over the border to graze.
Lakini sasa kuna mwanzo mpya. Let us pick up another beginning. This one takes us back in time, behind the moment we started counting. Because despite the worst drought in 40 years, despite the changes, despite the retreat of God, the people are not without hope. not without help. They have the rainmakers, spiritual leaders who use rituals and deep nature observation to predict the weather and advise the community about where to take their cattle and when to plant their crops. The power of these people is most well preserved in South Sudan, where the relative isolation from encroaching modernity has protected their practice and their role. Let's listen to how Joseph paints a picture. Let's imagine together.
The rainmakers are scattered, but there are many, and they are respected people in the society, because when they speak to the communities concerning the changes in the season, what they say become reality sometimes. For themselves, they say that they speak direct to God, and God listens to them. In the communities, there are ways that you can tell this person is a rainmaker. One, they are unique in the culture. The clothes that they wear are unique. Anyone cannot put on those clothes that they have if you are confirmed to be the rainmaker. And then again, they are also unique in another way. Sometimes you could find another rainmaker cannot wear the shoes, cannot have the shoes. And other rainmakers can also put on the skin, the dry skin of the goat or maybe of an animal. And then again, you can also tell another rainmaker cannot sit on the table, but instead they can sit on the local mats or on the dry skin of a goat that has been slaughtered. Again, the way they are looking to their hair, they don't cut their hair, they leave it grow, and sometimes you could even tell. And even the spear that they have, they could hold or like they stick. These are the things. Other people also wear beads on their necks. If you are passing in a village and you do not know whether that person is a rainmaker or not, you can go, you can even see the shrines, something like shrines. And again, the rainmaker, you can also get him having a lot of followers. Those who are his followers, you could find them around him. There are no women who are rainmakers in our area, but women participate when the rainmakers are conducting the events. You could find women gathering themselves, and then they begin to be clapping their hands while singing songs that praise that rainmaker when they are doing the events. And then you could also see the rainmakers surrounded by the young men and the young women. The boys could be sing in a group, singing their own songs, the women and the young girls, and then the men and the elders, like that. You see, there are some food a rainmaker cannot eat. And the relationship with the community is very stronger because they don't speak anyhow and they don't perform their duties anyhow. They do it at a time when they are calling for the rains. And the government, the authorities in the areas do not interfere with their activities. They are trusted by the government because they are not strangers. They are not danger to the government. Whatever they do is not affecting the government, and instead it sometimes helps. Government consider it like they are helpful in the society. One of the things that they observed is the migration of the birds. Swarm of the birds. If the birds migrate or fly from one place to another, this is one sign. Another sign they also see the changes in the leaves of the trees are also indications. Another thing also which they also observe the stars. These stars at night, when they are sitting at night, they begin to put their eyes up on the sky to see how the stars are look like, and even the changes in the stars from above. I don't know how they do it, but that is what one of the ways that they can also notice. The movement of the cattle from place to another place are also indications about how they observe. And also, when the crops are cultivated, when they are germinated, they can tell this year there's going to be pest and disease. And then from there, they can tell you what to do to prevent that pest and disease. Sometimes you could see them going to the forest. You spend time there, going around, checking the leaves of the trees. Others could go to the bigger tree. There are certain type of the trees that they target. They can go and sit under it, and others can even go and dig around to even pick out the roots of the trees that are in those forests.
That's how they are in South Sudan. In Kenya, the rainmakers are also active, and there are similarities in their practice, but difference also. We attended a rainmaking ceremony and saw how they read the intestines. They would select a goat, skillfully pierce it directly through the heart so that death is swift. Then they will skillfully cut the stomach to extract the intestines, known as the marrow. Arrange it on well-placed green cut leaves. 1 to 2 rainmakers would zone into the marrow, using their eyes and hands.
How the hills and valleys correspond with the large and small intestines.
How spots on the intestines can depict movement of cattle or rainfall drops to hidden dangers in the community.
How even the drinking of the blood reveals even more accuracy.
How the Wazee both agree and disagree politely on the mirror intestines below them on likely events to come. These traditions sometimes come into conflict with Christian believers and communities who see their power as witchcraft and evil. But their predictions are keeping the people alive, and South Sudanese government recognizes their leadership and credibility. In these areas of South Sudan, scientific weather prediction services are unable to reach the people because of both a lack of meteorological capacity and also poor communication channels to reach the people who need it. This practice of rainmaking, known as an indigenous technology, is present across the whole region, but the whole region is no longer whole.
It is time for yet another beginning. Yes, the region is no longer whole. South Sudan borders Kenya and Uganda to the south, and Kenya also borders Somalia and Ethiopia to the east and north. But of course, it wasn't always so. In 1884, European imperialists met in Berlin at the peak of what became known as the Scramble for Africa and began to divide it up amongst themselves, creating invisible borders between nations where once there were none. Although the countries of Africa are no longer under colonial rule, the borders remain and impose national identities and limits on people that make no sense in their migrating pastoralist lives. As the natural resources of rain and so also pasture become increasingly scarce and patchy, some countries and regions get a better climate deal than others, but the certainty of this is decreasing.
As water resources drop and nations look to protect their people and their interests, conflicts and clashes seem inevitable. We spoke to Stanley Kibiu Tiritu, National Management of Disaster Officer based in West Pokot County, a county bordering Turkana. His mandate is to ensure that drought is managed in the region.
We have seen our livestock move to Uganda in numbers, and they don't come back. Like right now, we have 70% of our animals in Uganda. So the 30% that's around, you can see if Uganda closes border right now, or we get into trouble of some sort with Uganda, we left 70% of our livestock there stuck. So you can see with the climate change, our numbers have been increasing to Uganda, especially the livestock numbers, and they don't come back because the grasses don't regrow enough to support them. So we have been seeing animals going there, not coming back. But the good news is that we still see farmers going there to pick them for selling, so they are able to access them and use the money to buy food here.
People seek where there is that resource, that natural resource, that is water and pasture. They move from West Pokot to Uganda. And remember, northern Uganda's Karamoja district, we have also Pokots living, so they can accommodate their brothers, That's that brotherhood. So you don't just force your brother to get away when he has a problem. So you need to accommodate him after the drought. Then you say, "But go back to where you come from."
Maybe this one leads to security and insecurity.
Yes.
There has been, even at the local level,
yes,
it seems climate change variability and variability is contributing to insecurity.
Yes,
in the ground, because on the Turkana side we have issues, on Marakwet issues, Uganda you have issues.
Yes.
Is it true, or what is your take on it?
Both through all the places we have a problem. You cannot just go to somebody's place and then seek refuge, take the resources they have, deplete the resources they have without a quarrel. Somebody might quarrel. In Uganda, for example, we haven't heard of any quarrels of yet, but last year, a squabble emerged that we have a border of Moroto Hills, where Pokot tried to push the Amos beyond their boundaries that they were given. So if you go to Turkana, that is obvious. Turkanas and us, we have a very bad blood. And even if they accept for a few days. And remember, the river, the Takwel River, okay, it has a lot of pasture within the riparian area of that particular river, a lot of grass. So we need to compete with them. We need to go and request them, please help us when you have a problem. But they can accept for a few days or a few weeks, and then they just start a feud.
This colonial beginning brings more than national borders. It brings an economy based on cold, hard cash rather than herds of cattle. It brings a modern education system which prepares people for the global economy rather than pastoralism. It brings different belief systems and different leaders. That colonial economic story tells the community that achieving success and security needs modern education and urban jobs, and that rainmaking, pastoralism and farming is a thing of the past.
Let's not forget the speed of change with technology. Mobile phones, smartphones, WhatsApp focusing, M-Pesa, the mobile money transfer service, and transports such as the boda boda or motorcycle taxis. Technology has helped to share climate information easily through digital communication platforms such as WhatsApp messaging, enhancing information to be shared quickly, but has also led to the fragmentation of families as youth spend lots of their time on the devices and no time to share, are sitting and learn from the elders. Benefits include mobile money easing trade, boosting the rural economy, traditional artists making money through online platforms, and also enabling people to save money on their phones. Rapid urbanization is fragmenting rural traditional livelihoods, changing family dynamics.
There you have them. Enough beginnings to inch your way forward. Hold them tight as we dive into the messy middle looking for signs of bird's eye seeing.
Psych, psych, panda, psych, psych, panda, panda. In the messy middle, the Kenyan regions of Turkana and West Pokot local meteorological centers are working hand in hand with the traditional rainmakers. We met Francis Mwinde, County Director of Meteorological Services in Turkana. He has been in this role for 12 years and has created bonds with traditional rainmakers. He attends each traditional forecasting ceremony of the Wazees, rainmakers, and gathers their climate information. He shares his science-based focus with them, integrating their indigenous traditional knowledge to develop a regional weather prediction. You might ask yourself, why is this important? It builds and unites possibilities of old and new ways working together.
Yes, the community are familiar with our form of science, even if they may not understand how it works. An old museum in Turkana referred to a scientific tool as the glass box, which in many stories is a thing of wonder and beauty, a giver of gifts. For the mzee, it was a tool, an indication of weather patterns, much like the buds on a tree branch or a swarm of butterflies on a particular morning. A sign, an indication of meteorology in an entirely different language. There appeared to be a curiosity and openness to this different kind of technology and a desire to work with it rather than against it. Rather than seeing these two ways of predicting weather as conflicting, They are seeing them as complementary, and this is not just about the weather predictions themselves, but also about the networks and approaches they each have to access the community. The rainmakers are connected to everyone through their status and visibility. Through word of mouth, they have extensive reach, while local meteorology services access their audiences through local radio. Is this not perhaps a bird's eye seeing, bridging the ancient and modern worlds in their knowledge systems?
Psych, psych, panda, psych, psych, panda, panda. In the Messy Middle, an annual festival which remembers and celebrates a peace accord which started in 1978, brings delegations from all the neighboring nations bordering Turkana. They come to renew their commitment to one another to keep peace. Riverbeds as the center stage for the festival. The sky, trees giving backdrop. Crowds of communities colored in various red, ochre, clay. Cars of government officials streaming in to honor the event. Men and ladies adorned with jingles and trumpets, reaching up to several hundred people from different neighboring wards and sub-counties within Turkana region. Clearly, the weapons of war buried underneath a decorated structure of art at the base of the peace accord.
Songs, stories and music joyfully celebrating peace fill the air. The audiences arrive amidst the dust joining the throng, the magnificence of the Atakere peoples dressed in their splendor, soldiers in arms to ensure that peace prevails.
The role of a festival is vital for the coming together of diverse communities. It is good for communities to come together and share moments, celebrate, commemorate shared values, understanding, and also give back to the rural economy. This is a place where arts can flourish and bring people together, and the artists have important messages to share through what they make. We spoke to one musician who had created a piece of music about peace. This is what he was saying through it.
So that's the key message is, let us have development with peace. There is no way you can have peace. No, there is no way you can have development without peace. Yeah, that's the key message.
Sasa ningependa tu wimbo moja ingine ya kumsifu mama. Na nataka wamama wakuja hapa wakimsaidia kuimba. Ndio mama.
Bila no. Hapana ngaraka ni to mi tumnya ba yote nda minya ba ibu mun clinic. Bas. Agora vai.
Yeah, kizazi na mombati loketo. Ay, kizazi sin Kristi na mama. Oh, kizazi te plati yo. Ya veria magule, lazin zer veria gogole. Ya veria magule, vole Kristina. Ya veria magule, testa tu mi sukari, sin Kristina. Testa tu ba machani, sin servelon organ.
Is this not a bird's eye seeing? Bridging communities across the disaster of externally imposed borders.
In the Messy Middle, entrepreneurs are seeking new ways to revive the economy. The tourism prospector from Rwanda, a neighboring country in Eastern Africa, products stemming from the name tree industry, and the festival food supplier with an eye for opportunities.
When I was in Uganda, on the Uganda side, it's raining, so it's a rainy season. And when you cross here, it's totally different world. It's giving an impression that the area needs a lot of work in terms of conservation. And me as a tour operator, I feel like we need to develop more responsible tourism and ecotourism, eco-friendly tourism. That means bringing people together for joining effort to sustain our trees, our rivers. It is very important, but also engaging the local community in local friendly activity. Eco-friendly activities. So that means my perspective, my vision for the tourism here, it's also to engage the visitors in sustaining what we have already as natural resources. Our clients mostly they come from US and Europe. And to be more specific, to work with social media influencers
Is this not a bird's eye seeing, which seeks to offer new generations new income-generating possibilities, which not only keeps them in their community, but protects the environment from further erosion?
In the messy middle, the Triangle Schools Initiative in Uganda is an exploration of unity. Children from conflicting communities are educated together in a commitment towards building lasting trust and interdependence.
Is this not a bird's eye seeing, which breaks down the deep-rooted tribal conflict through new generations of children learning, playing, and dreaming a future together? Dreaming of a future that borrows from the past is how we have always lived. When John and I visited Lodwar, a town in the middle of nowhere, some might claim, the evidence of cultural borrowing in the youth was evident. We drove around witnessing young, beautiful girls wearing their traditional shuka, their bead necklaces draped round their necks, and the hairstyle shaved at the sides and braided at the top, in contrast to the young men whipping up the dust as they powered through on motorcycles, their elaborate dreadlocks and braided styles, extraordinary sunglasses that imbue a Mad Max steampunk vibe, all the while draping themselves in the traditional 3/4 length shuka, a blanket casually thrown across their shoulders, an embodiment of a fused identity, the old and the new seeking ways to move forward together. Another sign of bird's eye seeing, or maybe in this case it is a peacock and vulture feather swapping.
Psych, psych, panda, psych, psych, panda, panda.
But what of our story's endings?
Our conversations with Joseph and our travels to northern Kenya revealed many flashes of bird's eye seeing. But are these flashes enough to stitch the story of this climate-stressed land and its climate-stressed people together? This is the part that really hurts. We don't know if it is. Where bird's eye seeing can reveal new stories to live into, we find hope and creativity. But in some places, the speed of change has left a kind of blindness, a kind of gasping, as the story people have been living by falls away to nothing.
The community used to have many rituals and spaces in which old and young came together, but now those practices fall silent. The young suck up compelling stories and images through their mobile phones. Is it that they no longer crave the stories of their elders to warm them in the dark?
There are children who cannot access the schooling they need to succeed in the modern world. But neither are they being taught the old ways, the indigenous training that taught them the ways of the land. What will become of them? There are young men eager to marry and put down roots, but the people are now too many. The land is too parched to produce the cows they need for dowry. Without cows, they cannot marry.
These truths are difficult to hear. Loose ends we do not yet know how to braid into the whole. But a storyteller's gift goes further than retelling what we've heard. We can also birth new stories into the world. What if these people were brought together in a regenerative storytelling practice to remember the stories that have nourished them and to develop new ones which can carry them forward?
What if they could grow imagined futures which bridge divided generations and divided communities?
Peacock and vulture are knocking at the door, asking to be told, eager to help the people build the images and language which will re-anchor them to the wealth of the wild world and to each other.
Tension shuka, tension shuka shuka, tension shuka, tension shuka shuka. Psych psych panda, psych psych panda panda, psych psych panda, psych psych panda panda. Tension shuka, tension shuka shuka.
Oh, kizazi mamba chimondo no. Yeah, kizazi na mamba chilo keto. Ay, kizazi Kristi na mama. Oh, kizazi tepati yayo. Yaver yamagula, lazin zerbe jalgogolo.
Thanks to our project partners, Adverse Camber and ICPAC, and the project funders, the British Council.